Nearly 2 years ago, we had our very first Rise event. I had recently learned a process that finally put all the pieces together for me, and I knew that I could run an intensive 4-day event that would be more valuable than a year of therapy. And I invited men that I had worked with, men that I was currently working with, to Rise Week. And the results and the empowerment and the strength were something I hadn't seen in all my years of spending hours and hours in my office. Something comes alive with men when they're together, fighting a battle, outdoors, connecting to their core, to their purpose. And on day 4 of the first Rise Week, January, we were here on the edge of this cliff. Now the water, about 43 degrees, it's chilly outside, and I'm going to flip the camera around a little bit. And I stood up here on this cliff with these men, and I showed them this buoy. And it says my wife, my life, my kids, myself. And I talked to them about how easy it is for people to say they would die for their children, right? If I ask you that, would you die for your children? Yeah, absolutely. I'd push them out of the way of a oncoming bus. I'd take a bullet. Dying for someone is easy. You die. What we're inviting you to is to live for your family. To really come alive and invest your energy and strength into the things that matter. How often do we spend time on things that don't really matter, that don't bring us fulfillment, that don't lift us? I invite you to rise to your potential. So I want to talk about another cliff. Now this cliff, it was last year actually. I hit some hard times, 2019, and I didn't know what to do. I was facing some challenges and just felt overwhelmed. And I went to the mountains like I often do. And I went up this little hike. It was near Solitude and ski resort, but it was summertime. And I was just sitting on the edge of this little cliff looking down. And I had this little voice come into my head that said, "Jump." I was like, what? No, I'd never felt suicidal before in my life. And I knew it wasn't coming from me, right? That wasn't my thought. And it came again, and it came with this message: jump, you're worthless. Your family deserves better than you. You can't do this. And I don't know how often you guys have felt that feeling of you can't do this, or you're not enough. Maybe you feel helpless or overwhelmed. But for whatever reason, it was really compelling at that time and overwhelming. And I considered it for a minute. And I kind of came to my sense. I was like, no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. And I backed away, went down, and started to drive back down the canyon. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this canyon. I can't remember if it's big or little, Cottonwood Canyon, but there's this spot, me and my buddies growing up called it Silent Rock. It's this space where they've carved the road in between a rock, and so there's a cliffside on one side and then there's the rock on the other side. And the idea is you're supposed to be quiet as you go through Silent Rock, or you'll have a bad snowboard day, is how the legend goes, right? But I'd never stopped at this spot, so I stopped and I hiked up on top, and I'm again on the cliff looking down on the road. And that same pervasive thought came, more intense this time. It's you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. Now, I was pretty early on in building the concepts of the Rise. I think we'd only run 2 Rise weeks at the time, and we were having great events. We were facing some struggles with how do we run these events. It costs a lot of money, and we don't have financing, and all these sorts of things. And I just kept having this thought of, you can't do what you want to do. Jump. And I don't know how many of you have been on that type of cliff before, whether an actual cliff or this desire to end your life or to run away or to end your marriage or to disengage in some way. But as I climbed back down, I realized that not all the thoughts in my head are mine. Not all those messages that roll around are coming from me. And I made a commitment that I would push forward to become the man I want to be and to help other men. Now, I've worked with a lot of women, and I guess one of the advantages I have in my own marriage, and I guess in helping men like you, is I understand wives. I do. It's weird. I learned. I sat with them for thousands of hours, and one of the key things that can be helpful is a little bit of curiosity and some genuine interest. That's not the main point of this message today. The main point is there's two types of cliffs. One is the one where if your family is down there in the cold, are you the type of man that jumps in after them? Now, I threw that buoy in the water. I jumped in fully clothed, and all 12 of those men that were with me followed suit. No thought of the height, of the coldness of the water. They jumped in after their family. And I recognize this was a representation, right? It's a buoy. But it was a commitment that they would go home and both feet all in. And we don't always get to choose the circumstances we're in. We don't always know how big the challenges are. But if we determine to live a life where we jump in, where we go after the things that matter for us, in my eyes, that's how we win. Or there's these other types of cliffs, the ones where we give up, the ones where we waste our strength and we don't rise to our potential. So I invite you to take a minute to think about where you are and are you ready to jump in? I'm excited for you to be here in the brotherhood, and I hope that some of the things I share touch your heart, help you get connected to who you are. Down below you'll see guided process, a meditation, a visualization that ties into this concept. And my hope is to help you feel something that causes you to go do something because you are becoming something more. I love you, my friends. Many of you have blessed my life. Some of you who are watching, I don't know yet. But this Rise journey is much bigger than a program or a company. This is a movement, and I'm glad you're here.